Good evening. I'll bring the meeting to order of the Saline County Planning and Zoning Commission for Monday, July 6, 2015. Not too many items on the agenda tonight. The first item is we have an opening as vice chairman, and I need a nomination for vice chairman of this committee. I will nominate Ken Stromberg.
Second.
Any other nominations? I will close nominations. Will you accept the nomination?
No.
Okay. Only fair to ask, right? It's a good campaign you did, too.
That's
You should be
right.
commended. It's a great campaign. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Welcome, Vice Chairman.
Thank you.
It's all yours.
Not yet.
Not yet, right, okay. All right, item number 2, approval of the agenda. Staff, is there any changes we need to make on the agenda?
Not that I can see.
Okay. I would entertain a motion approving the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the agenda as stated.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we approve the agenda of July 6, 2015. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item 3, approval of the minutes of our May 4th, 2015 meeting. Any comments on the minutes? Corrections, additions? If there are none, I would entertain a motion of approval.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the minutes as printed.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of the May 4th, 2015 meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item number 4, application SE 15-101. Staff, take it away.
Evening, Commissioners. This is a subdivision exception application. It's it's the southeast quarter of Section 12, Township 14, Range 2. It's out at the corners, northwest corner of Country Club and Niles. Basically, about 50 acres, I'm just going to round off numbers for you, but about 50 acres of generally pasture ground is going to be surveyed out for 3 future home sites. The remaining 109 or so acres will be deed restricted to farming. I'm going to get into this real quick. You'll see it as we come along later. As we go down Country Club, that area has developed significantly over the years in the Saline County area. You also know about north of Salina, there's a lot of development there, but that's where we're headed. When we talk about this, some of the issues, there are a lot of neighborhoods out there that have restrictions on their property for the type of housing that they can put out there. They want a higher quality and the number of animals specifically. Those are private restrictions, so it's something that's handled in the community itself, but something that we want to be aware of as we move on with any subdivisions out this way. There's the picture of the ground. Like I said, the field will be restricted to farming. The red area there is about the 50 acres. It'll hold the 3 development rights. We're not adding any additional development rights. There's already 3 for that quarter section. We're just condensing it to 1 area. The floodplain, there is a little bit of floodplain that touches the property, but it's so minor that there will be plenty of room to build around that, so I don't consider it any kind of impediment. There's also a Westar power line. The easement is running through the property. They've cleared for the easement. It's that black dash that you can see on the property there. The only thing Westar is concerned about now that they have an easement, there is no building in the easement, no placing trees. You can put small bushes in there. You can farm under easements. There's a lot you can do, just nothing that will grow and affect the power lines. The applicant has already provided me with a couple surveys. They haven't recorded them yet. They're looking to look at a 12-acre property on the west side and about 37 acres on the east side. The 12-acre one would have 1 development right. The 37-acre one would have 2 development rights. They could come in at any time after this is done to have a survey. Some of the restrictions we're looking at, and you'll see that in your conditions, we're asking for a condition for no mobile homes on the property. It shouldn't be a burden to the property owner. When you go out to Country Club, there are very few mobile homes. There are generally a higher housing stock, as we discussed earlier. And then one of the concerns that's been brought up is no confined feeding operations. And that should also not be a problem. I'm looking at restricting this only to the housing development. The part that's agriculture, feeding operations are agriculture, so I doubt somebody wants to do one out there because it's good farm ground, but they would be able to. Part of what the community is concerned with is the number of animals. For the county, I typically don't want to put a limit on the number of animals. I'd like to keep that as a private agreement. If you are looking at one, my experience will say that 1/2 acre of enclosure per animal is normal. That will give enough, and you guys farm and raise animals more than I do. You're gonna know a lot of this more than I do. The 1/2 acre per animal obviously means you are feeding the animal. It's not nowhere near enough land for pasture. At the same time, my experience is when people move out there, I don't expect them to have a lot of animals, even on 11 or 30 acres. Couple cattle, couple horses, the normal amount. And with that, have the applicant present somewhere? He's sitting back there. So if the planning commission has any questions for the applicant or for me, we're all set for you.
There were 3 development rights on this property, no TDRs.
Correct, on the quarter section.
Applicant or Jim, are you gonna come forward? We just can't wait to hear from you.
Commissioners, my name is Jim Mays. I represent Compro Realty and the applicant, 157 South 7. I've read the report. I think everything in there is accurate. We have no problems with the recommendations that he is giving. So I would reserve some time to answer if there's some problems with the community out there.
Yeah, come back to the,
Okay, thank you.
thank you, Jim. Yeah, I'll open it up now for any public comment, yes or no, and then when we're done, I'm gonna bring Jim back up for some questions for staff, from the commissioners. Public comment, either way, yay or nay. You're always welcome to the podium. Oh, yes, you do. We gotta get you on TV. Smile, you're on TV.
My name's Gary Johnson, and I farm the land, this land that they're talking about developing, and the rest of it's gonna be ag land. I'm kinda interested in buying the ag land, but if you guys are gonna put a determination on there for ag land use only, then I don't think I will be. Because I'm not intending on building ever on it. But if my boys inherit the ground, I don't want to do something that's going to tie their hands in later years. Now, I don't know if there's anything else we can do about it or not, but that's where I stand.
Okay.
And we have a problem with houses for spraying and different things like that. It just don't work. You can't get no help to spray because everybody gets out their goggles to see who that is and find an attorney. We're gonna sue him.
How many tillable acres is left?
There's 101.96 or 7.
So the majority is tillable.
Yeah.
That's gonna be
Well,
left.
there's
It's gonna be
a
left.
pasture way, and the old building site and stuff that all's gotta be cleaned in order to farm it. But, that's what you're gonna be getting.
Sure.
And that's all I gotta say.
Okay, thanks, Gary. Any other public comment? If you want to speak, come to the podium.
My name's Dennis McMurray. I live right south of this property on Nelson Road, first house on the east side. And I emailed the county to let them know our concerns. And so we had a covenant when we moved out there that we got as when we bought the house. And my only concern was, is there gonna be some kind of covenant that would be provided for the landowners? Not objecting to having new neighbors, it's just a matter of control, and ours was for 25 years, and we're beyond that now. So I suppose the neighbors could all go, you know, get 10 horses and so on and so forth, but they're not. It's a residential area,
Right.
so. And that was my only concern, if one person buys a 3-acre property and the other one buys the rest, or 10-acre property, whatever, you know, are there gonna be any restrictions as to what that property can be if it's residential, or can they run it as agriculture? So, and that may answer some of Gary's things too, is that having a covenant for a number of years until his kids take it over. I don't know, so. Thank you very much.
You bet.
I appreciate all the information that was put out.
Sure, thanks for the comments. Any other public comment for or against the applicant? Seeing none, I guess we'll bring Jim back to the podium and let's fire away questions at him.
My only response would be with Gary. Gary is under contract to buy the 101 acres.
If it ain't restricted to agricultural use only.
We don't need to get into
Right,
that
right,
here
that's not
at
our,
all.
that's not our
Um,
thing.
And the other issue is we have no problem with the mobile home restriction or the number of animal restriction, which would be placed on the land. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Commissioners,
Yeah,
fire away.
Yeah, I got 2 questions real quick. Do you have anybody who's looking to buy that residential section right now?
That's why we split off the 12-acre parcel, Commissioner Troe, because we have somebody that's interested in that
Okay,
west
Sure.
12 acres.
thank you. And the other one I really have is, what were you thinking of for access roads? Were you going to go multiple roads or one road for all 3, or
Roads for each lot that's developed.
road for each lot?
But
then?
these are, as you can see, these are going to be very large lot. These are not 3-acre parcels. We
Right,
have a 12-acre parcel, then we have 37 acres that is going to be split one time. So that may be in another 10-acre parcel, that may be in a, 15-acre parcel. We have no idea yet until somebody comes forward and wants to buy it.
okay.
Have you had any comments from Road and Bridge
None.
as far as driveways?
The most I've gotten was from Ottawa County Rural Water. They're a little concerned that a driveway culvert may be difficult to place in there because of the location of their water line and the way that the ground is formed. But that,
Are you familiar with where,
Yes.
what they're meaning?
And we can work around that. And we just have to elevate the drive or however.
there's
needs to be
always a way
done.
around it.
Right,
Yeah, there
right.
is.
Right.
We can design
We're not
around it.
set in stone where 3 driveways are going. We'll move them wherever.
Correct.
I have no problem with that. Okay. Any other questions?
Yes.
Fire away.
Can we go back to talk about access for 3 properties? Some of the community members addressed the school bus issues, and I travel that road at school time all the time. And that's a big concern. If the bus has got to make 3 stops, plus further up Country Club where the houses all have access on Country Club, there's like 5 stops in a row. If you're behind the bus, it can be dangerous. They recommended like Shannon Street, something like that, but we didn't have so much access on Country Club. Has that been considered?
It is not, but they can make one stop and pick up all 3 lots. I mean, like the subdivision across the street has 1 stop. There's, how many?
No, it's
7
not.
houses.
No, it's not. No, they each,
Oh, they drive up your road?
yes.
But they
stop
could
at each
easily
driveway.
stop and pick up everybody at 1 stop. I mean, it's, unless it's required by law, I have no idea.
Don't do that further up Country Club or on Nelson. They stop
Okay.
at each house.
No, we are planning on 1 driveway per lot. If we go the other way, then we've got to go through a whole design and subdivision process to put in a common street, have common ownership, have common maintenance. I mean, it becomes a major issue.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Mhm. Anyone else?
Well, if you do have 1 driveway for each lot, how far apart would they be along Country Club Road?
Whatever the county requires would be our separation you know, like I said, we have no idea what the 37 acres, how it's gonna be split. You know, I don't remember what the dimension across the front of that whole acreage is, that
Could it
49
be
acres.
200 feet, Mr. Neal, or 500 feet, or?
Typically, it's gonna be more than 300 feet separation.
Hmm.
Just the 12-acre parcel is 300 feet wide. The remaining land is the remaining 37 acres is 1,040, so you're looking at 1,300 feet to place 3 driveways.
Hmm.
And each property would be an individual property, so they have the right to place a driveway in there. We don't have much that can require or force a joint access. We're happy to have it. If somebody wants to do it, we're happy to do it. And it saves money for everybody.
Yeah, I would prefer to have one main driveway and then sort of a frontage road inside the properties. 'Cause I
Unfortunately-
agree with what
But
Mrs.
then it'd have to be a
Bloomquist was
common
saying.
property.
Right.
Yeah,
We would have to
and
go
that,
through a
that
subdivision.
becomes a
Subdivision.
major,
Yeah, gotcha.
and that's why we kept it large lot. Instead of, you know, if we were gonna do that, if we divided this up into 3-acre parcels, we would have, what, 15 of them or 14 of them?
Hmm.
We could do it that way, but we didn't want to get small lot. We know you don't like the small lot developments, so we've got 10-acre parcels, or, you know, so. It's large lot, and we're restricting the rest of it for development, so. I thought we were meeting your goals, I mean, directly head on.
Anyone else have questions for him?
I have one more, sorry.
Fire away. That's what we're here for. I
Yeah.
told you we got 7 minutes, we're done, so.
You said it was gonna be a 10-minute meeting.
Okay.
We're already over it. And one of the homeowners sent in comments about junk storage or dumping restrictions. That's probably beyond our scope, but just out of curiosity, is anything in place to help maintain that?
Nothing. We have no covenants on this property. I mean, you have those
We have
ordinances against that.
Yeah, we have limited ordinances,
it's-
but don't expect city-level nuisance ordinances. We don't have nuisance ordinances, but we can restrict some junk to a degree.
I'm sorry, I think I forgot something. Was the water, is that mentioned?
Yes,
Mhm.
there is a water line on the north side of Country Club Road, fed by the water tower that's just west of this property.
Anyone else?
Yes, there's been some talk about covenants, and I think those are a good idea. But Mr. Neal, doesn't the property owner specify the covenants? We've got nothing to do with that, do we?
No, the covenants are done by the property owner.
Okay, so there were a few comments from people that we should require certain restrictions, but it's not up to us then.
We can ask the applicant for conditions like no mobile homes and no feeding operations. That's a condition of development based on the character of the neighborhood. Beyond that, I don't know that I would ask for much more.
So Mr. Mays, have covenants been drawn up yet, or are you
No.
good? So do you
There
plan
will
on
be no covenants on the property.
no covenants?
Correct. Now, we agree to the no mobile homes and the feed yard or whatever covenant you're talking about there that will be placed on the property. We have no problem with that.
Just for clarity, that would not be a covenant, that would be a
Condition.
condition, which is
Condition.
basically treated as a county regulation.
Which you will put on the property as
Correct.
soon as this
How are we
hearing's over.
wording the animal issue? I'm writing down no mobile homes. How are we addressing the animal issue?
I believe I
Right.
have it written in a condition for
Yeah, the
you.
current condition
How do you
just says,
feel about that?
That's fine. We have no problem with
is
that.
that,
Okay.
is that specific enough where it just says confined animal feeding operations? Could
It's
that
a
be
half
interpreted,
acre
That covers a
ways.
considerable amount for
you know, if
any
you
of
had a big chicken
KDHE's.
coop versus, you know, a feed lot?
Yeah, it'll cover feedlots, any of the larger operations. It won't cover chicken coops. It won't cover smaller operations. I don't know the exact number that KDHE limits on their feeding operations. So it might be 10 animals out there and
Where
not
do we
be
draw the
considered.
line? I mean, we don't really have you're okay with the wording they have here, confined animal
Correct.
feeding
Correct,
operations are prohibited.
correct.
And that is
And that's
specific.
This,
about as
this
vague
is
as
meant
it
to be,
comes.
this is meant to be a hobby farm.
Right,
Yeah.
No, that is a specific term for KDHE,
okay.
implying that if they wanted a confined animal feeding operation, which requires licensing from KDHE, on this property, it wouldn't happen.
Correct,
And you're okay with that?
correct,
Okay, so that's, condition 6 is good, condition 5 good.
correct.
Okay. Any other questions?
But I would say the comments I've read from the neighbors, they would feel more comfortable if there were some kind of covenants to put some restrictions. Because if you don't have covenants, you can do almost anything you want to. You can store junk cars in your front yard and,
Within county regulations.
yeah.
Within
So,
regulations.
You still have ordinances and regulations on
Mhm.
such things.
Okay, I want to address Gary's concern, deed restricting the ag land. Let's discuss that.
The way the regulation allows, we allow one development right for every 80 acres. This is a quarter section, 160 acres, divided out, you get 2 development rights. We also allow an additional development right for original parcels. That is any parcel that has not been either divided or made smaller since, I want to say 1976. Don't quote me on the number, I'm not reading off the code there.
Sure.
So this parcel has 3 development rights. When we look at the surveys that Jim has provided, they can easily create those 2 lots, they just need to file the surveys. Each lot would be a buildable lot, and then the remaining 109 acres would have 1 development right out there. There would be no restrictions placed on it, just follows county regulations. In the future, the property owner could come along and do what normally happens. Well, I built a house on this 109 acres and now I want to sell the house off, or I want to sell the farm ground off. That's when we place that restriction, to make sure that there's not an additional 4th buildable lot. So outside of subdivision, I can't get around that.
So any future development of that would require a subdivision? Full-
If, this hasn't happened for the county. If a property owner came in and wanted to subdivide deed restricted property, there is nothing to say that the county can't rezone it, create a plat, and lift the deed restriction. But there would have to be some kind of cause to lift that deed restriction.
Mhm.
Let's just say that the world would have to change enough that that piece of farm ground really is much more valuable as housing than it is as farming. But at this point, we are a farming community, so I don't see that happening anytime soon.
I believe, if I may interrupt, the other possibility is if the landowner wants to transfer a development right from some of his other property in a floodplain,
Floodplain,
which,
Correct.
that's one of your goals, is to stop that.
right.
He could transfer that to this property. It has to come back to the commission. You
The
have to
TDR.
approve it. You lift the deed restriction for that one development right, or 2, whatever.
Right.
Whatever
can-
it's up to you guys
Yeah,
at that point.
you can
in
bring
time.
floodplain back onto this property.
Correct.
And that would be another one where the planning commission would have to consider lifting the deed restriction. I'm just going with the premise that a deed restriction
Mhm.
has been placed at this point. If the applicant wanted to, they could attempt to transfer a development right. They would bring that in front of you. It moves from a floodplain to any ground that's not prime farm ground. If it is deed restricted, the planning commission would have to look at, one, is it not prime farm ground, which we would have to do the soil survey to figure that out. We'd have to figure out if the property's coming from a floodplain, which is not hard. And then you'd have to figure out if it's worthwhile to lift that deed restriction. The question at hand would be the pressing county agenda there of preserving farm ground or preserving floodplain. So becomes a hard call, and I'd probably leave that up to you guys, or whatever board is up here at that time.
Mhm.
But on the other hand, with a deed restriction, we've always considered that permanent.
And
So
generally,
Once you put it in place, it's there for decades.
generally, I consider it permanent, but it is in the hands of the county planning commission. Since you're the one placing that restriction, you have the authority to lift that restriction.
But based on the fact that we're taking 3 building rights, we have to deed restrict the remaining.
Correct.
If we had 2 to where we could give 1 to Mr. Johnson, then we wouldn't have to be.
There would be
deed
no need for a
restricting
restriction.
it. Gotcha. Talk about a rock and a hard place.
But that's what we've always done in the past. You know, in a situation like this, we've had a permanent deed restriction on the agricultural land, so.
One other point. The contract between the Bliss family, which is the owner of this, and Mr. Johnson very specifically states that he's buying ag land only with no development right.
Which
So,
is, that's not our,
But that's not,
right.
I just want you to know that it's not coming out of the blue that this is happening.
Right. Yeah, just want to make sure everyone understands the playing field that we're on, and so. Commissioners, anything else you want to discuss with the applicant, staff?
I'm still thinking about those 3 individual driveways. So Mr. Mays, would that be a great hardship if you had to have an internal frontage road and then have 1 external driveway to Country Club Road?
You've got to remember how far it is across there.
Yeah,
I mean, you're not making just a short driveway. You're making a large driveway across, what is it, 1,400
feet.
1,300 feet. I mean, it's not something simple.
yeah.
Then it has to be a shared maintenance, and you get into all kinds of legal issues when you start doing that. So we would not want to do that, no. Thank you.
It seems to me that if they're meeting the conditions that are already laid down by the county on the road situation, it's kind of a moot point with me.
Exactly. There's very little that I can enforce on that because each property has access to the road. They just have to create a driveway. If we're doing a subdivision, that's a lot different than we are looking at specifically access and driveways and how to get around.
I missed it too, Jim. Are all 3 properties going to be facing Country Club Road? Will they all having a butt up against Country Club Road, all 3?
Yes, each property will have at least 300. I think that's your code.
They'll be required to have a minimum of 3 acres and 200 feet
But they
of
all
frontage.
3
200.
properties will have access to Country Club Road?
Yes, direct
I mean,
access
will
to-
face.
You'll
Country Club
face
Road.
on Country
Yes,
Club Road.
thank
They'll be
Correct.
required to.
Okay, good comments, good discussion. Anything else? Fire away, applicant or staff? Seeing none, I will close the discussion. I will bring it back to the commissioners. Any discussion amongst ourselves?
I wish we could better address the concerns of the neighbors.
Yeah, I would kind of like to see a covenant. You know, the neighbors have asked for a covenant, so that might be a good idea to see that, or something like that.
But is that within our preview to require a covenant? I mean, this is rural ag land
Right.
that we're looking at, so.
Unfortunately, based on what you've always done in the past, it would be a stretch to require that condition.
Okay, with that, I will close the discussion. I will open the floor for a motion. I ask the motion to be made on the affirmative, and then we will vote accordingly. So, with that, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve SE 15-101 with the 6 conditions for approval that staff has provided.
I second that.
It has been properly moved and seconded that we approve application SE 15-101 with the 6 conditions provided by staff. And those are provided on page 3 of our minutes tonight. Any discussion or any amendments to that? Seeing none, I will ask for a vote by show of hands. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Looks like I have a 5-3.
Was your hand up for no? Or
Yes, yes. 5-3 plus me. So 6-3.
yes.
Motion approves.
I got 6-3.
Thanks, Jim.
Dwayne, just for clarity on the minutes, Ms. Bloomquist,
Seconded.
Mike Wilson, I'm looking for who voted no,
Who
and Mike
voted
Trow.
no? Mike, Deborah.
So it was those three,
No.
no, and then the rest were yes. Yes.
That's it.
Sorry, just making sure we have the minutes clear
Sure.
next time.
Gotcha. Okay. Good discussion, board. Thank you very much for that. Okay. Application number 5, or item number 5, staff, you want to explain this one?
Yeah, let me pull up my report here. The county commission has asked for a change in our code, and I'm gonna apologize, anybody that was here for the subdivision exception that has been approved, I'm happy to discuss anything with you after the meeting, but you're not required to stay for the rest if you're not interested. You're more than welcome, we want to hear your comments on the rest, but I also don't want to bore everybody. Sorry, getting to my application here. The county commission has asked for a change in our code regarding the voting requirements for zoning items. To put simply, the code right now says that any recommendation made by the planning commission or any appeal of a conditional use permit from the planning commission would have to take a unanimous vote to overturn the planning commission. The change would change this to a 2/3 vote. I think I have 3/4 on my text up there, but no, it's 2/3. The basic history, prior to 1991, there were no requirements for the amount of votes, state or county otherwise. It was just anything that was appealed or brought to the county commission. And I should be clear, zoning ordinances, zoning text amendments, zoning map amendments go to the county commission, and comprehensive plan amendments. The planning commission makes a recommendation. The county commission would have to either vote to approve or vote to overturn you. For conditional use permits, when they're appealed to the county commission, at this point, they have to be a unanimous decision to overturn you. Let me keep going here. In 1991, Kansas put in a regulation saying that there's a requirement for a 2/3 vote minimum. What they were looking for is some kind of supermajority to overturn the planning commission. The state values what the planning commission says. That's why all the public hearings are placed on the planning commission and everything is run through here. Saline County at that time amended its code and required a unanimous vote because 2/3 of 3 people, at the time we had 3 commissioners, is a 2-person vote, and that's not a supermajority. In 2007, that unanimous vote requirement was challenged by the Alsop Sand case. There was a new state regulation put in 2009 requiring no unanimous vote for mining operations. And what Saline County looked at was to amend its charter for unanimous votes in 2010. I don't want to go into all the fun legalese of it all, but basically because Johnson County is treated differently than the other 104 counties of Kansas, we don't have to follow that one specific regulation. There's lots of legal stuff that goes into it, but that's why Saline County changed their charter. Obviously in 2015, our planning commission went from 3 people to 5 people. Our regulation still says unanimous, so that would mean all 5. Our recommendation is to change it to the 2/3 vote, and that would go back to the state's supermajority. And I want to be clear, when you divide out 2/3 of 5, it comes out to 3.3 something. Since you can't have 0.3 of a commissioner, it goes up to a 4th vote because it's obviously more than 3 votes. We don't round down on those numbers. The language, basically in section 1408, talking about zoning amendments, we cross out the word unanimous and put in the word 2/3. And then for conditional use permits, we cross out the word unanimous and put in the word 2/3. We also get rid of the part that says, see the charter resolution regarding the mining operations. That no longer applies because we would comply with state regulations across the board there. That's all I have for you. If you have any questions.
Questions for staff? I'll open it up to public discussion.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ray Ruska, 235 North Santa Fe. I'd like to make a point on an issue here that probably none are aware of on this board. And the commission in 1952 was established by a Resolution 64. Has anyone actually read that?
Yeah, I was going over that this morning, yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you. I was scanning over that and kind of looking at it, and I run across a section that said, and of course it was based on the 3x5 commissioners on the Planning Commission in 1952. And there was actually 5 commissioners then. But now there's 9. So that number would change to 6, you know, in other words, to get to the next level of the percentage of 60%, or close to that. This resolution states that the board it would consist of, in 1952, would be 3 or 5 commissioners. And it says 3 of the whom live in the corporate limits of the incorporated cities of Saline County. Okay. And then it goes on to say, of whom are to be of the same political party. Here comes the question. What is your political party? And would you state that, please?
I'm sorry, Commissioners, this is not a
not a
political board,
necessary
and that is not a
precedent.
current regulation.
Okay, thank you for your discussion. Okay.
Well, what are you basing this on? You know, you're basing it on a resolution that was created by the county, 64. I'm reading you information right from it. And you saying that don't relate to this?
Take that to the commissioners and discuss with them. Thank you. Okay, staff, any other items?
That is all that I have.
Okay, any additional items? Anyone wish to?
Well, we haven't
You
approved.
have to vote on this.
Yeah.
Make a recommendation to the county commission
Um,
and see if there's any more public comment.
Right. Okay. Yeah, you betcha.
Ron Madison, I'm 2755 Scott Avenue in Salina. My question is, if you're doing a 2/3 majority, why aren't we just doing 4/5? Because if there's only 4 commissioners there, can they theoretically, only 3 vote for it and still pass the?
No, with the 2/3, we are trying to make it, the 2/3 is the state recommended language. If we went to 3/4 or 4/5, it would basically have the same effect, requiring 4 out of 5 commissioners.
Okay,
to
so it'll
make
always
that vote.
require 4, no matter what?
Correct. When you do the actual math, and I forget the number, it comes out to 3.3 or something like that. But I want to make sure it's clear on the minutes, it's in my staff report. There is no, because it's more than 3, we go up to 4.
Okay, all right.
There is no 0.3 of a person.
And a 2/3 is normally considered a supermajority
Typically,
for
yes.
a lot of bodies, not 4/5.
Correct.
well, with,
But there is a difference if there are only 4 commissioners present at the meeting.
Zoning requirements, let me find it in here. If the government, let me see. Override the planning commissioner's recommendation by a, in this case, 2/3 vote of the membership. And when they say of the membership, that means the full board. So if somebody's absent, you basically voted the other way.
And in that case, it would take a unanimous decision if there were 4 commissioners?
Basically, yes.
Yes, of the ones present.
Correct.
Is there I guess my question is, what's driving this change? Is it just to be in compliance with the state, or was it a request?
County commission request.
Okay, any rationale behind that request? I know it's a tough question, but.
Yes, there is. Based on the last text amendment, there was, the the county commission was not able to get a unanimous request, so they've asked to table that and change this, which is something the county has actually been looking at doing anyway for a little while.
It's a mathematical thing.
And an interesting point we made in the 12 years that Mike have been on and I've been on here, only twice has a decision been overturned by this board. So it's just kind of and one of them was the one that's listed up there. So it looks like we're just following the state regulations, and
Which is good.
yeah, it's not something that happens a lot. So anyway, we do our job and we do it well, right?
I think so.
I think so. Any other discussion? I'll close it to the public, bring it back to the board. Any discussion among the board members?
Just, I guess one question as well. If we approve this or this recommendation to the commission, since this is a recommendation to change, it would require 5 votes from the commission to.
Correct. This regulation does not go into effect until it's first approved by the county commission and then published in the Salina Journal.
But it would require, at that point, 5, because that's still the current regulation.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, to overturn your decision.
Overturn our
Overturn
decision.
it. If
Yes.
they just accept it, then it's just a majority,
It just, yes.
simple majority.
Yeah, that's a good technicality, you're right.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, board, I will ask for a motion. Once again, I will ask for the motion to be made to the affirmative, and then we will vote accordingly, yea or nay. Motion?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve TA 15-102.
I'll second that.
Okay, it has been properly moved and seconded that application TA-15-102 be approved. Any comments I need to make as far as
No, there's no conditions, there's no,
no conditions, no other wording that needs to be put
Nope.
with that motion? That the application speaks for itself. Okay, I have a motion and a second for the approval. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. You got
So
your
is that-
count?
Stromberg and Barrett as opposed.
8-2. What do you, 7-2, I guess.
Is approved 8-2. Or, yeah, 7-2.
7-2.
Sorry.
I ran out of fingers.
New math, right?
That's right, yeah.
Fingers are too quick. Okay. Thank you, board. Thank you, board. Item number 6, any additional items brought forward by the staff or the commissioners?
The only thing we have coming up is next month. You'll have fun with this. It's a renewal of a conditional use permit for the Johnson Sand Pit that is it's on Schilling, east of Ohio. I haven't done all the research on this thing, so I don't want to say too much, but it's been in operation for a while and continually doing 5-year updates.
Right.
Most likely, we'll just recommend that it's finally approved until it runs out. And that's all I have for you.
Anything else on the burner?
That's the only one coming up to the planning commission. You had asked earlier about the kennel application that was approved in February. At this point, we are researching to see that the conditions are met or not, so that will take some time to research. It's not required to go in front of the planning commission if the conditions aren't met, but that always comes up to, it could come back to you if that's what you're looking for. If nothing else, it ends up expiring, if all the conditions are met, it does expire December 2016, so we have to renew it then anyway.
Any other items, staff, board members? With that, I will accept a motion of adjournment.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adjourn.
Second that?
Been properly moved and seconded, we adjourn. Meeting adjourned.